There we go. So, yeah, a lot of people come into contact with the Hague Conference on Private International Law because they become involved in child abduction proceedings. But what I want to sort of make sure that everybody understands, it's not just about the Hague Convention on international parental child abduction. There's also a family law convention on adoption. It's called the Hague Convention on Intercountry Adoption. There's also one on child protection. These two came after the Convention on Child Abduction. There's one on child support, which was mentioned in our session yesterday that we held about with a man who's been investigating the involvement of huge multinational corporations in family law systems, in their IT systems. So he said, I told us, I didn't know this, a company called Maximus Inc., which does a lot of big scale government contracting, runs the international system for collecting child support across borders, which he as a father found quite problematic, and some of us mothers might find it too. So there's a convention about divorce, which is on this list, which I don't know anything about. Something about wills also, but also protection of adults. Actually, those last two do concern me, because one of the purposes of this family court unconference is to help us to understand that when we're talking about abuses of the human rights and legal rights of families and family courts, it's not just about children. It can impact adults, and there are increasing concerns about older adults, about the elderly. So one of the phenomena that we're seeing is basically the abduction of adults by social services from families who would love to care for them and are desperate to and fight through the courts to. And these are individuals who want to be at home with their families, but they're forced into care homes. Then what happens is that the authorities get hold of their assets, their homes, their bank accounts, and say, oh, well, you're in care now, so we have to draw down on all of your assets and, you know, bye-bye to the family's inheritance. It's also about wills and probate, guardianship orders in the United States, which refer you know, to older people and people who are deemed to be without competence on mental health grounds to administer their own private affairs. In the UK, these kinds of cases are being handled in the Court of Protection, which I always see as the sinister big brother of the family courts, because they're equally untransparent, and these decisions that get made over the lives and futures of children and vulnerable adults who lose the right to freedom. There's the issue of children being put on deprivation of liberty orders, being essentially locked up in facilities where they have no freedom. Martin, if you wouldn't mind, we might have to leave that for another time. We're going to get together again because we've got so much to cover. And this Hague Convention topic is a big and juicy one. What was I saying? Yeah, so let's imagine that you're a parent who is desperate to get medical treatment for your child. I mean, in the UK, we've had cases like this, which were very much in the public eye. So you know that there is a hospital abroad which would treat your child, that there is you believe that there is a chance that they can be treated. You go to the High Court, and the High Court says, no, this child cannot be removed from the hospital, and your child is left to die. Your child is taken off life support. It might be an adult as well. So families who, in situations where they have lost the right to make decisions concerning the welfare of themselves and their close family members, and who leave the country in an attempt to protect themselves and their loved ones, we may find that there's then subject to Hague Convention cases, whether they know it or not. I think sometimes they don't even know. Basically, the authorities can get the authorities abroad after you, and you can be apprehended, arrested, have your loved one whisked away, put into a care facility, given into the custody of your abuser. You may or may not find yourself subject to criminal proceedings because of that. So that's just to sort of set the scene of the sort of bigger picture of the Hague Convention. This is where I'm trying to sort of bang the drum that it's not just about the child abduction cases. We've got to keep an eye on the other ones. One I didn't mention in that list, and which is not on this webpage, is surrogacy. There are huge concerns about what the Hague Convention Conference transparently refers to as the surrogacy industry, which a lot of people are calling another form of human trafficking. Currently, there are very, very few checks done to assess the safety of potential surrogate parents who would like to enter into a surrogacy agreement with somebody. So the Hague Convention is seeking to regulate that. But I have got concerns which are absolutely shared by a lady called Roly Post, who spoke yesterday, and I don't know if she's on this call, who was intensely involved with the Hague Convention when she held the child protection portfolio in the European Commission, and she witnessed and will testify that the Hague Adoption Convention is a form of legalizing human trafficking, that these people who are involved, maybe not all of them, but certainly some of them, are openly engaged in the purchase and sale of human beings, of children. And I have reason to believe that the Hague Child Abduction Convention is another way of trafficking children, because it is about systems which involve the exchange of money one way or another to effect the transfer of residence of a child into a situation where that child will be abused. So yeah, that is my sort of starting sort of position, setting the scene. And I just want to sort of put forward a sort of short manifesto. I'm going to change the tab. That I wish I could do it. Hang on a minute. Let's see if I can just change. Hang on a minute. I'm going to have to reshare. Little manifesto and sort of what would you call it? Oh, drat! I'm sorry, I'm so rubbish at this. Yeah, a position paper calling for the abolition of the or withdrawal of countries from the Hague Child Abduction Convention. And I'll give my reason for this. If I just zoom in here a little bit, it's, I'd say, quite a compelling legal argument, and Nicoletta is going to speak about this as well. The Hague Convention on International Child Abduction belongs in this sort of mid-blue box, international agreements. It does sort of, this refers to EU countries because this is about actually EU legislation, but this actually applies to all countries. So the Istanbul Convention and the Geneva Convention is international humanitarian law, which says if you're a victim of cruel and inhuman treatment and torture, that you have the right to asylum in another country. That country is to protect you from the state where you're being persecuted. Now, there is a piece of, there's an excellent report, and I'd be very grateful if somebody was kind enough to drop it into the chat. It's a report by a former UN Special Rapporteur on torture, who defined domestic abuse as a form of torture in some instances, and that abuse can be compounded when the state does not uphold its obligations by law to protect somebody from that kind of torture. And in that case, that does imply the potential state level liability for, if you wouldn't mind just letting me finish this piece, Nicolette, for imposing that kind of torture on somebody. Yeah, so what is happening is the Hague Convention comes along and sits in this mid-blue layer. So what happened to me in my case, first of all, 2016, and I'm in touch with other mothers who had this happen to them as well, the father took the child abroad and obviously and said that he was not going to return them, two children. First thing I did, obviously, was call the police. The first thing the police told me was, sorry, madam, this is not a police matter. This is a civil matter. You need to get a solicitor. You end up in the civil courts. And then you find out that there's this piece of legislation called the Hague Child Abduction Convention. You need to file a request for the return of your children with your local central authority, which is a government body, which communicates that request to the civil court system in the country where your children are located, and then you have to fight through the civil courts to see whether your children can be returned. They may or may not be returned. Yeah, Martin, yes, you've had the same experience, because the Hague Convention is full of loopholes, intentionally so, which make it easy for the civil court judges to wriggle out of their obligations, which in fact they don't even have, because in the civil jurisdiction, judges have got almost unlimited discretion. So there's very little that you can do about it. So it means it's Russian roulette. It's up to the judge to make the call whether they feel like returning the child or not. On the flip side, and I've been in both positions, if you are fleeing a bona fide a situation of torture where you're trying to protect yourself, trying to protect your child along with yourself or just your child, the Hague Convention will come down on you like a ton of bricks, because what seems to happen in almost all cases is that the judges do not uphold evidence of the most serious abuse of the children. I'm in touch with mothers who have been imprisoned, in one case for 1.5 years, because they took their children to protect them from sexual abuse. It doesn't feel like we've got recourse at any instance of the courts. In the domestic courts, the highest courts of appeal are upholding these decisions, which are devastating the rights and lives of children, and obviously of the parents who are desperate to protect them. I know I've been through the European Court of Human Rights myself. My complaint was dismissed on grounds that I hadn't submitted every single piece of paperwork that they required. I submitted within the time frame, but they said, well, you know, I wouldn't have had time to submit the complete paperwork within the time frame. But what would have been wrong of saying, thank you, we've received your complaint, we'll be processing it, please can you urgently provide us with X, Y, and Z documents? That would have been pretty easy to do. And I've spoken to another woman who has found out in her country that the authorities are routinely doing this, that there is an administrator sitting in a sort of country office in the European Court of Human Rights, filtering out applications and essentially putting them in the bin on flimsy excuses like this. I also have my lawyer in Croatia who's represented 2 mothers in cases very, very similar to mine, who made complaints at the European Court of Human Rights, and they were both dismissed, which made me very glad that I did not bother. This is a political issue. This is about talking to Parliament about these insane abuses of the human rights of families and children, and getting something done about it. My proposal is withdrawal because, as Nicolette will explain to us, the Hague Convention, we believe, has no legal basis. Rolly Post, the EU whistleblower, also believes the same thing. It violates international law. It overrides domestic criminal law. It makes it more likely, less likely, that not more likely, that bona fide child kidnap cases will actually be prosecuted and the children returned. Itself is causing the most serious abuses of citizens and their legal rights. Okay, that is my introductory spiel. I can take a breath now, and I would love to hand over to Nicolette, who will speak to us further.
Hey, can you please, Natalie? Oh, Jesus, I don't know what's going wrong with my camera. I'm like this.
Oh, you know what? I have to stop presenting. There you go.
Can you give me back, Natalie? Hi, everybody. Can you give me back the first picture with the hierarchy of laws?
Yes, I can. Go right ahead and speak, and I will do that as we speak.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening within the European Union, including the former UK, is the biggest legal fraud. Not this one, the picture.
Yes, I'm coming to. I've just got to scroll through.
I'm coming to the picture which you wanted to, about the hierarchy of laws, because what's happening within the Europe, yes, that's it. Because what's happening within the European Union, including what's happened within the European Union, including the UK, as long the UK was a member of the European Union, is the biggest legal fraud. It's nonsense. So it is a vandalization and violence against the entire EU's legal system through the Hague Child Abduction Convention. And it is so breathtaking that the EU has no way to get out of this and to uphold the Hague Child Abduction Convention between the EU member states. So what I want to explain to all of you, I'm an EU policy analyst and political advisor. I have been working nearly 7 years at Hungary's permanent representation to the EU as head of communications and strategic advisor. So literally, I know what's going on. I was working there between 2003 and 2010. So the thing is this, what Natalie wrote, there is a hierarchy of legal norms within the European Union, which is as clear as 10 is a bigger number like 4. It's very clear. 10 is a bigger number like 4, and 20 is a bigger number like 4 and 10. So that's very clear how the EU legal norm looks like. So there's a hierarchy of norms that the EU treaties, and since 1st December 2009, when the new treaties entered into force, also the Charter is primary European Union law, which means the EU treaties and the EU Charter are primary European Union law. And secondary European Union law must be compatible with the treaties. I'm clear about this, Natalie, am I? Yeah. And the thing is,
it's understandable for the audience.
Is it understandable for everybody? So the treaty is like a number 20, which is bigger than number 10 and 4. So this is very clear for everybody. But
I think that the sort of potential issue is, I'm not sure how many people that we've got on the call who might be involved in EU cases, and whether people.
But we need to understand that if we want to get the Hague right, we need to leverage from the European Union, because all other countries, there is no access to justice. There's no access to justice to attack the Hague and to attack the unlawfulness of the Hague Child Abduction Convention. There's no access to justice. You cannot go together countries to a court and say this is a violation of our entire legal order. You know what I mean? You cannot do this. The whole world, where are you going? You go to hell. There are 103 countries, or maybe 104, who have adopted the Hague Child Abduction Convention, and you cannot sue the Hague Conference on International Private Law. You cannot go to court. These 103 countries are doomed to fail. They cannot go to court. You cannot go to the UN court in Hague, to the international court in Hague, you cannot go. This deals with problems between countries who ratify the UN conventions or members of the UN. So we have no access to justice. And we have to understand that also the implementation of the Hague Child Abduction Convention in the countries of the Council of Europe, where the UK is also a member, they are not so connected with each other, not so strongly connected with each other like within the EU, like with the EU. So the only chance we have to get right and to scream from the rooftop that the Hague Child Abduction Convention is not human rights based, and it's pushing the primary caregiver into a position of a disenfranchised, doormat and subordinate without human rights, is in the EU. Because in the EU, we have a very strong legal structure where the member states are connected with each other, and we can demand accountability because of the unlawfulness of the Hague Child Abduction Convention only in the European Union. So our hope is the European Court of Justice, that mothers, primary caregiver mothers who have been impacted by the Hague Child Abduction Convention can go to the European Court of Justice and make a collective complaint and demanding not only restitution, but a new legal order in which the Hague Child Abduction Convention is not implemented any longer in the EU, but replaced with fair rules, with fair secondary European Union law. So what I wanted to tell everybody, what is at stake, that we need to go to court, and there is no court. The 103 member states, or 104, I don't know, have ratified now the Istanbul, the Hague Child Abduction Convention have no court. They have no place to go. They can go to hell. That's the biggest problem, that we have as victims of an international convention, no access to justice. The only access to justice is the European Court of Justice within the EU. And the European Union has, according to the treaties, also an obligation to uphold human rights around the world. So the European Union has a legal obligation not to implement the Hague Child Abduction Convention between the EU member states, but to say, hello, everybody, this is unlawful. We can't do this between our member states. And the European Union has also an obligation to stand up and say around the world, this cannot go anymore. And that's the two ways to get the Hague Child Abduction Convention either abolished or right or whatever. But it must go through the European Union, and because there is the political power and the legal power and the legal obligation to do this.
Yes.
That's the most important thing, which has to be what I want to tell you. Understood. There is also a second thing which I wanted to tell everybody. The Hague Child Abduction Convention is an international convention, but the EU is not part of the Hague Child Abduction Convention. The EU has itself not ratified the Hague Child Abduction Convention, only the member states. And that's why the king is also written in secondary law is below before secondary European Union law. The second strongest ranking has in the EU after primary European Union law an international convention which is ratified by the EU, like the Disability UN Convention or the Istanbul Convention. Then comes secondary European law. And below secondary European Union law, we have all international conventions, like UN conventions, Child Rights Convention, for instance, or the Hague, which have been ratified by all EU member states. So the Hague Child Abduction Convention is below secondary European Union law. It's nonsense implemented between the EU member states. It's nonsense. It's nonsense that the primary caregiver cannot move with the child freely into another EU member states, but is doomed to fail in poverty. That's
I'm just actually looking up something which I found on Wikipedia, and that's the reason why I started looking into this issue of conflicts of laws, which said that where an international agreement conflicts with a national national laws. You know, so for example, with domestic laws or criminal laws, or with things like the Human Rights and Equalities Act, which derive from international humanitarian law, but are human rights law, but are actually enforceable within a particular country. That country is actually not under any obligation to implement that law, which actually makes perfect sense. So it's actually my belief that the United Kingdom, for example, if it wanted to, if there was a political will, could just somebody's I'm getting an echo. If the Parliament wanted to, would you mind just popping yourself on mute while I'm speaking, because I'm getting an echo? Yeah. If Parliament wanted to, they could just cease applying the Hague Convention tomorrow. What was it? Where was I? Sorry, I've lost my thread a little bit. Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that we need to be campaigning for. We need to be raising awareness of how desperately it's impacting families. Oh yeah, the other thing that I was going to say, the reason why I think that the legal complaints will not get anywhere, it sort of goes back to what I spoke about yesterday about the ultimate gaslighting trick, with me and former European Commission official and whistleblower Roly Post standing in front of the Peace Palace in The Hague, looking up at this amazing, impressive building, which houses the Academy of Private International Law and the International Court of Justice, which is the highest instance UN court in the world. So basically, what I think is that the Hague Conference, which is aligned with this, what do you call it? Which is, are you on mute? I'm getting a lot of noise coming through. Pop yourself on mute while until. It really throws me. So yes, it's almost as if the Hague Conference is sort of nestled under the protective wing of, you know, these UN bodies, which lend it a legitimacy which it actually might not have as a piece of legislation. How valid is it that you know, there's this agreement reached between countries that violates international human rights and humanitarian law and is causing the violation on a state level of domestic law, including criminal law on child kidnap. Basically, it's legitimized child kidnap and made it impossible for families to seek asylum. And there are academics who are starting to talk now and publish papers on why judges in Hague cases have never, and not even at the European Court of Human Rights, have been, none of them have been talking about Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights, which the UK is still a party to because we're still part of the Council of Europe. So yes, until the Tory government takes it out, we are still obliged, you know, to abide by the European Convention on Human Rights. Article 3 is the prohibition of torture, but there are lots of other articles of human rights law, the European Convention and possibly the UK Convention on Human Rights and the Equalities Act, which are being violated by Hague Convention cases. So I completely agree with Nicolette. I think that on a national level, we should be trying to take collective legal action within our own countries. On a EU level, we can certainly be taking legal action, but that because the entire court system is so corrupted by the lobbies who've pushed this legislation unlawfully, completely undemocratically into our sort of systems of laws. I don't think that our complaints stand much chance unless we accompany them with serious public campaigning to put pressure on Parliament, and we need political support as well. So yeah, that's where I stand on that particular one. Yeah, oh, and I agree, currently there's no laws, yeah, in the family court. The family court is not a court. This is something that's becoming clear. It's a jurisdiction, it's called a therapeutic jurisdiction, according to other legal books that are written, which basically means the judge can say, well, you know what, according to my discretion, you know, this is the thing that would best, you know, sort of work for the child. But the question is, who are the judges who are making these decisions, and on what grounds? Are there conflicts of interest, like Samantha Baldwin talked about earlier, and so did Jane? You know, what do we know about the judges and their private and business and financial interests? You know, why is the best interest of the child defined as putting the child to live with somebody who is going to physically, psychologically, and sexually abuse them?
Can I just cut in there, because the statements of in the best interest of the child are not legal doctrine. They're only a form of paraphrasing in certain people's statements in the USA, which have never been brought into law. And effectively, this is why social services or the courts do not honour the phrase, even though they bandied about to a ridiculous extent. And I've tried to find this, and you cannot find it. It is attributed to two separate authors.
I've got a feeling, I don't know if there's anybody on the call who knows, it might actually derive from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And there are people who have written quite critically about the UN Convention, UNCRC, and whether there are actually some points which, you know, have actually, you know, cause damaging outcomes for children. And one of them may have been, you know, the phrase best interests of the child, which has been taken and really comprehensively, you know, warped, perverted.
No, I think it's actually, it is come from two separate authors in America. I have got the paper somewhere, but it's irrelevant because it's not law. One of the biggest parts of it is that it should be. And how can you not have the best interest of a child when this is what most of social services was originally supposed to be about? And I really don't understand how it can't.
That would be really interesting to see, Martin, if you might be able to share it. You know, maybe you know, we can connect after this unconference. In Article 1 of the Children Act in the UK, it says, you know, all decisions taken must, you know, the best interest of the child, or something like that, must be paramount. You know, it's fairly clear in law. So, you know, who is there? Somebody else who'd like to speak? Nicolette, have you got anything else that you'd like to speak? Is there somebody else who'd? So I haven't got my thing open. I haven't seen if there are any hands up. Nicolette, do you want to go ahead? Have you got anything else? If I see Anita's on the call, it'd be lovely to hear from you, because I know that you have plenty of thoughts. I don't know if Kim is here. So, Nicolette, if you're speaking, you're on mute. We can't hear you. Nicholas, hi, are you speaking? We can't hear anything. Oh, Rowley's here. Hi, Rowley. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes.
Can you hear me?
Rowley.
Wait, it's better now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait a second. I try with my headphones. So can tell me if you tell me now?
Yeah, just because I can see Rowley on the phone, I wanted to say, in the same way that in this family court unconference, we are finding that there are commonalities between families impacted by private family law, by public family law, by sort of abuse of the child in the medical system. I believe that we can use the same approach in the Hague Convention, as regards the Hague Convention, because we've got this sort of similar issues coming up in the Abduction Convention, in the Child Protection Convention, in the adoption convention, and especially in the surrogacy laws which are now being drafted, that I think that, you know, forming a sort of unified movement would be really helpful. But that's all I wanted to say just while I thought of it. Nicolette, please go ahead.
No. So what I wanted to tell, I like to have a very pragmatic approach to do something. That was the way how I could win after 6 years my custody case and keep the child finally. And it cost me my whole existence, but I know I will fight back on EU level. So what we have to understand, that on the global level, the situation is hopeless. It's absolutely hopeless. More than 100 countries are members of the Hague Child Abduction Convention, no access to justice, no court, and most of the countries are not democratic. Like many countries are not democratic at all, so we have no way to hold countries as the whole countries, the Hague Conference on Private Law, to account. We have no chance. So we need to fight in a good territory. I agree that the UK could be a good territory because the UK has left the European Union, but in the UK we have still access to justice. In the UK we still have access to crowdfunding, and the implementation of the outdated and discriminatory Hague Child Abduction Convention is incompatible with the UK's legal system, including the Equality Act. Or the Human Rights Act. It's incompatible, and according to Article 20 of the Child Abduction Convention, or Hague Child Abduction Convention, according to Article 20, the UK has the right to keep all the so-called abducted children whose mothers had to flee back to the UK. You know what I mean? So these children should never, not on my watch, be expelled from the United Kingdom to a non-democratic country. It's nonsense. But we don't have the numbers in the United Kingdom. We don't know how many children whose mothers had to flee back to the UK were sent back to Dubai or to any other countries. We don't have the numbers. So concerning the UK, I don't live now, not in the United Kingdom. But the thing is, concerning the United Kingdom, we need to go to the Human Rights Committee of the Westminster, of the UK Parliament, where Joanna Cherry is the chair. And they must undertake an in-depth legal assessment concerning the legality of the situation. It's nonsense that FIA Hague mothers and FIA have not requested this step. There are plenty of possibilities. I highlight again, and I'm 100% certain, and I hope Rolly agrees with me, within the United Kingdom, we must run toward the Westminster Human Rights Committee, and they must investigate this. How on earth is this possible? The children are sent back to non-democratic countries because of the Hague Child Abduction Convention from the United Kingdom, and the mother who was resident or UK citizen must go back to a non-democratic country where she is not safe from abuse. How on earth is this possible?
This is a really important point, Nicolette, and I would like to stress that in Rona Schutz's book, which I've just popped into the chat,
yes,
she makes the point that the Hague Conference people and other, the lobbies who are pushing it, and they're doing so very aggressively worldwide, are not doing any kind of due diligence about the state of the rule of law in countries which they're persuading to sign up. They're not, appraising them critically. So what's happening is, these cases are getting heard in cases where there is extensive corruption, and we should not be fooling ourselves that there is not corruption in EU member states. For example, where I ended up in Croatia. Another point is what was I going to say? Yes, Article 20. I read something very, very recently. It is about human rights, so a judge hearing a Hague case has got the right, it's written in black and white on the Hague Convention, that they have have got the right not to return a child if it would lead to abuses of the human rights of the parent or child. And that article is never used. And the reason why is a concept called judicial comity, which comes from this sort of system of conflict of laws, private international laws. It's like, well, we judges, we form a club, and we are very reluctant to undermine each other's decisions. So although a judge might well know exactly how corrupt a certain jurisdiction is, they will not go against it in order, to go find against that country's courts because of the concept of judicial comity. But then there's the political aspect as well. And this is why I love what Roly Post said to me about the Hague laws, not being about child protection, they're being about consumer protection.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this stuff is very closely linked with diplomatic relations and foreign trade. And certainly certain states are using the issue of the Hague Convention. They're using diplomatic carrots and sticks to beat countries into making certain political and legal decisions. This is throwing mothers and children to the wolves. It's saying, we don't care because we are diplomats in suits making decisions about trade interests, and we do not care if this child is going to get raped and abused for years. That is a reality. And we have got to address that. That is not okay. You cannot treat children like this. Sorry if I sound dogmatic there, but I am. I think we've got to be clear. We've got to be really clear about what's going on. I'm sorry to hear that, Daniel. You've been through this. Yeah. Nicolette, is there anything else you would like to say?
Yes, so what I want to, my approach is very pragmatic, get things done. Because we might talk, we might group, but at one point we need to go to the parliaments and to the governments within the EU member states. We must go to the European Parliament, jury committee, to the President of the European Parliament, and to the Westminster and to the British government, where we have a kind of accountability and say, this sucks, this cannot go on. What you are doing with the Hague Child Abduction Convention, this cannot continue. So I see possibility for legal action and a chance to get an answer somehow in the United Kingdom and within the European Union. Within the European Union, we must get lawful answers about the implementation of the outdated and discriminatory Hague Child Abduction Convention, which is incompatible with the EU treaties, including the Charter, both from the European Parliament, from the Commission, from the governments of the 27 EU member states, and from the national parliaments of the 27 member states. There are all kinds of political groups. So my idea is somehow, somewhere, right before elections, we will have allies. Not because they like us, but because it's from political point of view important to do something.
Yeah.
So concerning the non-democratic countries in Africa or whatever, I don't see any chance to hold anybody to account. So we must start, my point is that we must start to hold people, organizations, committees to account. One, I hope Roly agrees with me, and I would love to hear her thoughts. For instance, the jury committee, the Committee on Legal Affairs of the European Parliament, it sucks what they are doing. They cannot hide. They have celebrated the Hague Child Abduction Convention's 40th anniversary instead of doing their job, which is written down, to compare EU primary law with existing conventions and to protect human rights.
Right. You're right, but if you can't apply this, which is what I said yesterday, and when you do apply these regulations to anything, they laugh at you.
Listen,
listen,
if you are so cynical, I would have been in prison. So there is a point where they don't laugh about you. It depends. So if we have this victim and cynical mentality that they laugh about you, I tell you, they don't laugh about all people. There are some people and some situations they don't laugh. They also didn't laugh when MEPs have been arrested because of the Qatargate corruption. So if we cannot have this victim mentality that we are hopeless, helpless, and they all the time laugh about ourselves. If we have this mentality, we can kill ourselves because people are protesting on the street in Europe. And I tell you, they don't laugh in Germany about the increase of the far-right party. They don't laugh about the farmers. They are afraid. They are afraid. They were not laughing when MEPs have been arrested because of the Qatargate. They are not laughing when the pedophiles are arrested and they must give back their mandates. So there are certain situations when people have done so bad things that it is impossible for the political group or party to uphold this. So that's why I'm saying we must hold certain people's political groups very strictly to account, to a point where the media or the other political groups write about it. It is impossible. That is the only chance.
That's not happening here.
Where? In which country?
In the UK.
In the UK, because you don't hold real people to account. In the European Union, you can hold people to account if you want to. And the UK and the European Union as a whole and the European member states are different now from each other. But what I want to tell you, it can happen. So I see people dropping their positions. I see people being imprisoned, criminalized, or even in my native Hungary, I see this happening. So it can happen when it is too much is too much.
I would like to call everybody's attention to the parallels between what we are going through and the post office scandal, which since the year in the United Kingdom finally has broken after more than 23 years, I think, of those people campaigning. Those people begged with the post office to please, listen to them. They were stonewalled, they were gaslit, they went through everything that happened to us. But finally, the only way, to sort of fix it was, when they got the public's attention and Parliament decided to do something about it. And now what they have got is overnight, practically within the space of a week, a package of measures. And that's also, I'm putting together a sort of manifesto for, the EU Hague Mothers Project, which I'd like everybody to contribute to. And I think that this should be a sort of also a community piece of work to work out what do we need, what do we want to achieve. We should not be begging for people to please recognize that we're sad little victims of domestic abuse and be nice to our children. We need to be angry about the serious violations of our rights, the rights of our children, and about the harms that have been caused to us, and asking for compensation. We need this to change. It is not enough to go crying, oh, this will take years to resolve because of the culture and misogyny. You can't fight against misogyny, but what you can fight about are hard violations, abuses of the law and of your rights and of harms done to you. And this is the way that we've got to go. Immediately. It's
okay, but the problem is with that is it was using a loophole in law, and as soon as you get a loophole in law, the legal beagles come along from the government and close it. And the problem is with it, they also had a drama on the back of what ITVX did, which I've been trying to get together with as many people as I can to push ITVX into physically doing the same thing for this scandal, because it is a scandal. This involves Thorpe, a judge who has blocked all of these children movements back to their parents.
I actually believe that this ITVX documentary and the government caving in may have been actually because they're starting to get nervous, because people like us are starting to rattle the cage. And for example, one of the politicians involved, oh, damn. Hang on a minute, am I still online? Am I still online? Can you hear me?
Yes, I still hear you.
great. One of the politicians involved is James Arbuthnot, who undoubtedly has helped the post office victims. But his wife is a family court judge, and I've heard quite a lot of things about cases that she's been hearing. Yes, I would. Yes, so yeah, I'm a bit afraid it's sort of an attempt to whitewash, and there are attempts by the judiciary to say, oh, well, you know, we can't really have the Parliament interfering in our decisions too much of the time. Actually, you know what? I think we need to be taking a serious look at the justice system as a whole, assessing why these things have been allowed to happen and what we need to do about it. I'd very much like to invite Roly to have her say. Please go ahead.
Can I just say, just to finish up, to get into that frame to what the post office is doing, you need 500 strong group, which is what Mr. Bates has. Well, nobody has got anywhere near that at the moment.
We've got way more. We have got way more once we start getting together.
In regard to the drama, you need at least 4 good book writing families to be able to put that to the ITVX and say, look, this scandal is gone on long enough. I'm not aware of enough books of good personal content of what people have written about their own situations that can do this. There are 3 I'm aware of men's trials through the system. I don't have as many for women.
Samantha Baldwin, who spoke first thing this morning, has written one. She's got another one coming. And I need a publisher right now. I've got about 12,000 words written of my trilogy, which might turn into a series. And, you know, I need to get my proposal together and or whatever.
Have you tried Amazon?
I don't think I'm going to be putting it on Amazon. I want a big time publisher that's going to do lots and lots of promotion for me and get this as a bestseller. I was told in 2016 that my story was a bestseller, and oh my God, there's been a lot of things that have happened since then. So yeah, the judges involved in my case know that I'm threatening to write. Let's let Roly speak. Roly, please go ahead.
Microphone, that will help. Yes, there's 2 things I want to come back to. It's the first case when you said that I told you that the Hague Convention is about consumer law, and I can tell you that was not my invention. That was in fact when I had my first meeting at the US Embassy in Bucharest. It was the political officer of the US Embassy who said to me, "Oh, but the Hague is not about children's rights. It's consumer rights." Whereas I made it sort of a joke because I was very new and didn't reason. I said, "I hope you don't eat the children." It was later on I realized the enormousness of his statements, because the Hague Convention is indeed to protect the adopters and the adoption agency against any accusations of crime. So that's the Hague Convention. So that's consumer policy and not about children's rights. It's actually breaches the UNCRC by making adoptions possible. The second thing about if we can get somewhere, it's 25 years. I'm on this story. It's 25 years. People keep telling me I won't get anywhere. But I can reveal you, because it's not really a secret, I think, that last week was very exciting for me, because the French police has actually started investigating adoption from Romania, and several adoptees have been heard by the police last week. So unfortunately, Marion couldn't be here today. She would have liked to assist, but also from a point of view of language, you know, so that's why she doesn't speak English. But I can tell you on their behalf that it's not a run game. We're not there yet. It will still take a long battle, but the adoptees are being heard, and we also heard that very soon they will be hearing some of the people involved in this business. And I'm not going to name any names here, but Natalie, who started reading my book, knows that there's some kind of very, how do I say it? Suspicious person who has a great interest in children. and he will soon be visited. So I'm very glad about that, at least. So there is progress, but we just have to indeed continue pushing, and use the internet as long as the media will come. But media, I have had so much media over the last years, 10, 15 years, but what really helps is connecting with people. Because media, people watch it and they continue, even parliaments, there's outrage for 1 week and then they move on. We need to be in contact with people nonstop. But that was, thank you. Continue, Nicolette, if you're still there.
I'm
Yeah.
there, and I fully agree with Raleigh that we need to push. I have been doing this since 20 years, and we need to push forward, and we need to acknowledge each other's successes. So if we look always at, I think it is as Churchill said, the biggest problem is if you lose hope. Are you there, Raleigh? She's gone, but she might come back. So the biggest problem is, I think, if we lose hope, as Churchill said, and if we think we can be defeated or we are defeated. So the biggest enemy is not the unlawful law. The biggest enemy is hopelessness and helplessness. And they want to keep us in this state of helplessness and hopelessness through institutional betrayal, which is a psychological process. So I really admire Raleigh's courage and what she does and her attitude, and not to be defeated. And what we need to talk about is, I think, institutional betrayal and how much psychological harm, helplessness, hopelessness they are causing parliaments, members of parliaments, governments, NGOs, our beloved lawyers, judges, and once again, the NGOs. The only thing they have to do is often nothing. And it's causing institutional betrayal, which is a psychological assault against our integrity and against our psychological agency. So I have seen this and documented this, how much harm specific NGOs have caused me now on mental, physical level, only through non-action. And when we start to speak about institutional betrayal, then they are lost. Because Bendy also said, and many psychologists talk about this now, how institutional betrayal, just doing nothing, is devastating the victims. And when we speak up, I don't know, what do you think about this, Natalie? When we speak about institutional betrayal, the doing nothing is pushing victims into suicide. And when we name it and bring this to a level of complaint, they cannot hide any longer.
Yes, I think, actually, even just getting together like this, sharing information, naming things, stop ending the gaslighting, because we've all gone into courts and been told X, Y, and Z by lawyers, judges, social workers, etc. We've been made to believe, that we're bad and that we're wrong, and things have been given names which actually deserve different names. And I think the process of actually starting to understand the truth, I don't know, I find it actually personally quite healing. It feels like almost climbing out of the prisons that we've all been consigned to by this horrible system. But I agree with you about persistence. I know we've all tried and tried, but I read a story when I was a little girl about a spider who kept on climbing up I think it was an Incy-Wincy spider, climbing up the water spout, and the rain would come down, they get washed out, and they just had to keep trying and trying and trying again. It's persistence. It's a long game, but we have got to try and, ace it this year, because it's unconscionable. It can't be allowed to continue any longer. Yeah. Anybody else would like to contribute? Any Hague mums like to share their story, or Hague dads? I am in touch with a dad who's going through this right now, in hiding, actually.
No, I just would like to say that we need to win this game on the psychological level. The war of art. I mean, we need to win this case. It's an internal game, and whistleblowers and victims must. This is my conviction. We must win this case in the inside, as Roeli said. And if we win this case, that we can get justice and that this suffering must end and will end, then everything else in the outer place will fall into place. I see people arrested. I see people drop their positions. Trees don't grow until sky, but we cannot believe that trees go until the sky. So I think it is very important to have meetings and to galvanize each other's positive attitude that we can, we will. We can, we will.
And one thing that I also said yesterday, which I haven't spoken about today, but just to remind us, this is about the fact that we as impacted families and citizens have got a right to be included. This is about design justice for our communities. We need to have our voices heard when articulating the problem and be part of designing the solution. It's not enough to be, tokenistic about this. We need to be involved at a meaningful level to drive the change that we need to see, because it's us who are living this and it's our children who are impacted. Yeah, I can see Adoptee Watch, you've got your hand out. Would you like to speak?
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate a few points really. And can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Okay.
It's a bit if you can improve the sound, please.
I don't know if you're on a headset or something, but it's a bit difficult to hear.
Can you hear me now?
No.
No. Okay.
You got a mic? Maybe try without the mic or with it, or.
Headset. Well,
Still not really hearing anything.
just
Yeah.
bear with me a second.
Nicola, have you got anything? Is a new hand gone up, or is it a legacy hand?
Yes, I want to tell everybody that we should do something together about institutional betrayal and how the establishment is undertaking a psychological warfare against us to keep us in a hopeless and helpless and miserable
Is that the
situation.
That's the earphones and that's the speaker.
I don't hear the adoptee very well. I just wanted to tell. The voice is very fragmented.
Alison, can we hear from you while Adoptee tries to sort out the audio issues?
Absolutely, yes. I'm just thinking that the institutional betrayal is something that goes throughout all the systems, because I'm, not at the Hague level, but the impact is still as devastating, because I'm dealing with child maintenance, and without them responding, I can't move forward to do anything. So I'm actually immobilized by them. I think he's back.
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Just in a moment. Yes, just hold on a moment, because there's somebody who's come on just while we were waiting for you. Let Alison finish.
Okay.
Alison, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that action to address institutional betrayal goes throughout the whole spectrum of this. So it's something that benefits everyone, which is possible to benefit everyone. So I'm there for support if needed.
Wonderful, thank you very much. That's brilliant. I'm going to drop again into the chat the link so that people can sign up to be part of community actions going forward, and also just to keep on hearing from us. Yeah, Paul Bryan, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? Oh, gosh. Technically, you shouldn't be able to hear me because my equipment shows that, you know, I've messed around with it and it was okay before, but now I've messed around with it and it's working and it shouldn't be working. Okay. Yeah. I'd like to reiterate the post office scandal, about the post office scandal and what can be learned by it. Clearly, everybody was invisible for a long period of time. They were made socially invisible, and it was actively produced. There were people who wanted them to be socially invisible. We have a lot of different groups here, really, in this conference, and some are family court crisis. I'm an adoptee, and there are probably other interest groups here. And I'm keen on creating a focused solution or focused solutions. And that does mean that numbers get together in different surveys, because if we don't produce surveys, if we don't produce visibility, we're not going to produce effective means by which we've measured just how we were made invisible. There are very specific ways we were made invisible, but also if we speak out about how that invisibility happened and what exactly is invisible and what pain is connected to that invisibility, then that becomes visible. And I'm about visibility. I can see everybody wants to be visible. I can see everybody has been fragmented away from visibility. So I would think I would go back to the lesson what Martin said. You know, that the chap, I think it was some Derek Bates, is it? I can't remember his name. Somebody got together and formed a group, and they all got numbers. I mean, there's a big amount of numbers, and we see them every now and then produced on the media. What was it? 500, 700. I've seen other figures as well. So there's a lot of people affected, but these people have slowly got together and they have produced numbers. Now, I dare say Derek Bates has got an awful lot of data, which he's shown to others. And it would be great if he showed a lot more to everybody outside. But in our case, we do need to do that. These pains too, and these abuses we're all going through, or have gone through, and our lifetime effects need to be shown up. You know, and as an adoptee that's come from child abuse, I would say everybody's got to do this, and the sooner the better. And it's got to be done through surveys as well as other means, because I agree with Martin that drama, books, all these other means are great.
But that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get all the data from all of these services. As I said earlier, I have in my books a whole lot of information about Social Work England, the number of cases they don't look at. I've got the same thing for CAS, and the fact that they don't even do it. Statistically, it's all in there. Because
yes, and I think I'd like to respond, and I'd like to respond to that point. What is very helpful is, first of all, what you've done. Secondly, what's very helpful is to be able to take things from books and take, you know, sections and show them up on social media and keep doing it. I select stuff from books, I select stuff from stats, and I keep doing it on Twitter. And there's lots of people that have got to do that. We've got to keep upping the visibility of what numbers, what types of abuses, how many, and we've got to show those just by using your screen capture selections and making sure that a piece of a page is on Twitter, is on Facebook, is on various other means. And even, you know, doing voiceovers on your own small videos and stuff like that. But I'm all for surveys, because basically a bar chart will show quite quickly an awful lot of truth about hundreds of people. So that's my point.
I think you'll be surprised when you look at these bar graphs and you look at how little is actually being done for the parents. This is one of the reasons why I put them in the books, because it's just unbelievable.
I agree. I mean, I've been at community activism for a very, very long time indeed. I'm nearly 70. So I know how little return there is back for it often. But we need to keep doing it, and it needs to be regular. And it just needs to carry on year by year. I would actually tell everybody that Adoption UK does massive surveys. Those surveys go to inform the government. There is an evaluation team at the Department of Education which looks into the effects, for instance, of the Adoption Support Fund. That fund itself is hundreds of millions now, and it's taken away, to my mind, from early intervention help. Because what we've actually seen is a big swap over. We've seen more adoptions and less early interventional help. Now, it strikes me that we have to do what they do too. We have to counter antagonistically as well what they're doing, because they're saying this is working and this is the ideal. And what we need to say is, no, there's another side to this, and it's abuse. It's an abusive side. So that's my point, really, that it has to be held within surveys. It has to be held within a vehicle which we can all copy, take across to lots of other people, and keep showing and sticking in front of media. Because I do that on Twitter. I stick it in front of BBC. I stick it in front of whoever I've got to stick it in front of, and leave myself open for a chat if people want to chat. And half the time they don't want to chat about child abuse. They don't really want to go into very much about it sometimes. Those are my points anyway. I just wanted to make those points because we're talking about, I hope, in the end, focused solutions, and we do need some.
But it's interesting. The real problem is everybody wants to talk about how they've been abused and snatched, and or how the system has failed them at the front door. But nobody's talking about what's happening in these care homes and what's happening to these children, because they are given beatings and all sorts of horrible things because of the fact that it's all sanctioned by the fact that if a social worker can write a report about it, it doesn't matter. It goes ahead and they let it happen.
Well,
and
I think
disgusting.
Yes, I beg to differ slightly, because I'm an adoptee and I came through care and I've come through child abuse. I had child abusive adopters, and the result has been a lifelong set of pains and 38 years of psychotherapy to actually survive. So some of those experiences have formed in me the ability to ask other people's questions and to get answers to those questions about whether or not they were abused in care, whether or not they were abused by doctors, so on and so forth. And some of those numbers have been coming out in the surveys that I've actually done. And what I need to do is beef them up. And there is a transfer.
What you need to do, you need to give yourself a pat on the back and say, from everybody, you're doing a good job, because to be honest, we need more people that will do this.
Well, I think we need transferable. Can I just say that it's thank you very much for that. But the thing is transferable lessons. If I can do something that shows up child abuse inside adoption and various other contexts, then it's pretty clear to me that adults who are being domestically abused and their children who are being abused by family courts, there are questions we can put into surveys and we can get numbers, and those numbers can then be used for media impact, social media impact, and also legacy media impact, and also impacting books. There are many ways that we have to recruit. That's all I've got to say, really, that you know, we can transfer lessons from one to the other. I'm an adoptee. I don't have some of the issues that you have, but early intervention help for mothers is totally sacred to my heart, because when you help mothers out as much as possible, you secure the primary caregiver. And that means that the child gets the attachment it needs. If you've grown up without those forms of attachment, I can tell you, you have grown up often, not always, but often in agony and torture. And some of us adoptees have grown up with those kinds of disabilities, really, because we are partly personality disordered through it. So that's it really. I don't want to take up too much more time, but I do want to talk much later about solutions as well, you know, when we all talk about those kind of things in the workshops. Okay. So bye. Have you gone? Hello?
Do you hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear
Yes,
you,
I
Nick.
don't know, but I think it was absolutely brilliant what you said. Absolutely brilliant. And I'm so grateful because through them, when they are assassinating the relationship of the child with the primary caregiver parent, either father or mother, or with both of them, through adoption, through child abduction proceedings, through family court, they are literally ruining society because the child cannot form a secure attachment. And
Yes.
I am thinking, it was very eye-opening what you said. Thank you so much. Natalie has all of my contacts, so please get in touch if possible with me, because I think they are making disabled, personality disordered societies who can be
Yes.
controlled.
Yes.
So I think it's a psychological war against us, deliberately ruining the safe attachment of the child to the primary caregiver, either mother or father after the separation, or both parents. And they are now threatening society, literally everybody, to take the child away. Even in England, we have heard when the mother is pregnant. They are threatening everybody. If you don't do this, we take the child away from you. So I think I really like your approach. Thank you so much. And the wisdom you shared with us, because everybody's foundation is assassinated. And first and foremost, a peaceful society is assassinated, and our future.
Yes. Thank you very much, Nicolette. I will be in contact. You can hear me okay, can you?
Yes, I can hear you. And Natalie has all of my data, my WhatsApp and my mobile phone. We have been now working more than 1.5 years on this. We will now collect data from the European Union, from the EU member states. They are obliged. How many children have been in child abduction proceeding? How many primary caregiver like me lost custody and I could get it back? So I didn't have to hand over my child, but it was really, really traumatic and very expensive.
Okay, Nicolette, I will get your details. Thank you very much for that.
No, it was absolutely eye-opening. Absolutely eye-opening. Thank you so much. And Natalie
You're
and
welcome.
I would like to connect with a lot of men and with parents, so not only mothers.
Yeah, I count myself as a man and a child.
Thank you.
I'm a child inside a man, really, because I've never really grown up because of damned adoption and all the child abuse. But there you go. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, both of you. I'm glad to have that little bit of discussion going on there. We need to move on to the next session, but maybe if I might just invite Maria, who's got her hand up just before we do that. Is that okay? Maria,
I have a very brief question to Adoptee. Thank you very much. You've put things concisely and very clearly. Have you experienced issues with the credibility of the data, with the acceptance of the data? It's, for example, I just give a small example. In France, there was a 700 pages report on the sexual abuse within families. And as soon as it was publicized, there was an opposition basically from the government. And this initiative is now being shut down and silenced.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello, Maria, is that a question to me? Sorry, my equipment is going a bit weird.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now,
Sorry,
Marie.
is it better now?
Yeah, I think Paul Bryan was just asking if you were addressing the question to him. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So my question is there any practical experience on when the data is being disregarded by the government, by the think tanks?
Yes, the real problem I'm having is convincing people that grassroots surveys are in fact a bottom-up device which is valid. And in the UK, we had a experience over a number of years, some of us did, of doing mental health monitoring, which was pro bono. And the way we did it was bottom up. We went to the service user and asked them about their experience of the service design. Now, it's pretty clear to me that all of us are inside service designs, so we should all be asked bottom up, what is the service design like? And is it abusive? Is it wrong? Or is it great? Or is it fantastic? Or whatever. So these very, from the simplistic satisfaction surveys to asking more detailed questions on a bottom-up grassroots survey, if we do that, will it be validated or listened to? Now, we've got a real problem, because at government level, they're listening to universities, and universities sometimes are producing skewed types of studies, which are
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, that was my
So
question.
So I am very hurt and pained by the fact that I produced, for instance, a survey showing over 40% of adoptees, of the 97 adoptees, UK adoptees, were child abused inside adoption. And I produced those figures to show the independent inquiry into child sexual abuse. And they disregarded calling for evidence, because I said, please call for evidence, for more evidence. And they disregarded that. And I found that trying to get validity is being knocked out of court a lot of the time. But it doesn't stop me. It really doesn't stop me from providing the bar charts, the stats that I've gathered, and the experiences of people, and putting them into...
I'm really sorry, because we need to hand over to Rosie now, because as poor Daniela's
thank you so much for your answer, Adoptee. I really would like to cooperate on this, because I'm a specialist in this area. I really would appreciate keeping in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question as well. Poor Daniela's asking, are we having a break today? No, we're not. We're marching on. We've got back-to-back sessions, and they're all essential, so we've got to keep on timetable. But I also really appreciate that people are asking these questions and have an awareness about how the data agenda is being, it is an agenda and it is being manipulated. About how government has intentionally taken away data collection, and about, thinking about ways that we can address that. So thank you both for your questions and for your comments, and let's keep working together. Let's form working groups to discuss stuff like that. We can do this, it's not rocket science. Brilliant. I'd love to thank everybody who took part in that session. I'm going to just stop recording for a second just to